As some of you probably know, I'm a big fan of Batman, having been the subject of some of my favourite movies and TV shows ever. And with Robert Pattinson donning the cowl next year, as well as all those teasers for a new video game over the last few months, now seem like the perfect time to start sharing my thoughts on the Arkham series, starting in the Asylum. It's been little over a decade since release, and I think it's safe to say that Arkham Asylum was a bit of a game changer. Not only did it raise the bar for licensed games, but think of all the games that have had variations of the free-flowing combat sense. And what about stealth games featuring their own spin on detective mode? But I don't judge games on their influence, so does it actually still hold up and deliver a great experience in its own right? Well, let's find out. The game begins with Batman taking the Joker to the asylum after an unseen attack on the mayor's office. Suspicious of Joker, Batman escorts him to his cell along with the guards, unaware that this is all part of the Joker's grand plan. And that plan is made known as the Clown Prince of Crime escapes custody and takes control of the entire island. Soon low-life criminals and high-profile villains are running amok, and with Batman trapped on the island along with all of the Arkham staff, it's up to him to bring order back to the facility as well as uncover and put a stop to Joker's ulterior motive for taking over the asylum. It's actually pretty brilliant when you think about it. Not only does keeping the action on this island make sense from a video game standpoint, but it does wonders for bringing this then new interpretation of the Batman universe to life. For one, you have the Caped Crusader trapped in the place that houses some of the greatest villains in pop culture history, and they've been let loose, meaning you get to encounter a myriad of them throughout the story in a completely natural manner, regardless of how brief their appearance is. But at the center of all these showdowns is a thrilling narrative. It's a simple setup that hooks you immediately, and as you uncover more of the Joker's plan and as more of the villains leave their dent on the asylum, the greater the urgency becomes. It's also just a great rendition of the Batman mythos, with the characters feeling like very classic renditions of themselves. And I think the fantastic voice work is a big factor of this. As a huge fan of the animated series, not only is it cool that Paul Dini wrote the story, but having Arlene Sorkin, Kevin Conroy, and Mark Hamill reprising their roles, that's awesome! And the rest of the talents behind the mic perfectly embody their respective characters as well. The rest of the presentation is great too, with solid music and graphics that still hold up really well. But it's the unsettling atmosphere that really makes this game stand out from the other Arkham installments. I love how the environment keeps changing as you progress through the story. You can really feel the power dynamic shift. The first time through, the game's borderline creepy, with a suspenseful Killer Croc encounter in the empty sewers, the actual lunatics let loose at one point, and, of course, the Scarecrow sections. Now, I really don't want to spoil too much of these parts for those who haven't played the game, but they can really catch you off guard, particularly the third one, which is just genius. I remember playing through the first encounter on my first playthrough, becoming increasingly more unnerved, so that when I got to the morgue, I was so scared that I headed straight for the door, unaware that that's actually what I was supposed to do. It's a simple, effective, gripping Batman story that holds your interest right up to the end, and it's hugely accessible to even non-Bat fans. But what might be even more accessible is the massively influential gameplay. Now, it's worth mentioning that I actually played Arkham City first, then went back to Asylum. Why do I bring this up? Because even though I was used to a more advanced version of the combat system, I still think the fighting is incredibly enjoyable even in its basic form. After racking up a 3-hit combo, Batman can start weaving from enemy to enemy, who you can counter against, and later on, you'll unlock bonus moves like insta takedowns and the ability to throw the goons around. and you'll come across certain enemies that require their own strategies to take down. There's a reason this game's combat has left a mark on the industry. It's a blast! Racking up a large combo is extremely satisfying, which I actually didn't manage too often on this playthrough, but even so, it controls great and the new moves and enemy types keeps it consistently interesting. Throughout the game, you'll be fighting people infected with what is called Titan, a more advanced version of Bane's venom. The encounters are always same: throw a batarang, they hit a wall, you punch them, the end. People aren't big on these as boss fights, but I see them more as enemy types than actual encounters, except for the one against Bane. But moving on, some of the inmates have got their hands on firearms, so you won't be able to tackle them head on. This is the stealth part of the game, aka the Predator sections, and it's just as much fun as the hand-to-hand stuff. What makes it great is how you have a significant upper hand on your enemies, surveying the scene from conveniently placed gargoyles. This means that you can either go straight in for a silent takedown, or you can toy with your enemies a little bit as their paranoia gradually increases as more of them get taken out. It's a lot of fun, and I also like how some of them require you to remain undetected as you make your way through the level, leading to some variety in these sections that the later entries in the series don't really have. This is also where the game's detective mode really shines. This nifty feature allows you to see your enemies through walls and highlights any important objects in sight. It's an obvious asset to Predator mode, but you'll also use it throughout the story when you're following a trail. Also part of Batman's toolset is the different gadgets, from the batarangs, explosive gel, cryptographic sequencer, and the Batclaw, all of which you'll use to get past any roadblocks or to further aid you in the fighting. This game weaves through the two different combat styles, environmental puzzles, platforming sections, traversal, villain encounters, enemy types, item usage seamlessly, all within the space of a few hours. It's a tightly designed campaign that, for me at least, has warranted repeat playthroughs. There's quite a bit to discover outside of the main story too, from the Riddler trophies, the Chronicles of Arkham, and the interview tapes that further flesh out this universe. There's also the challenge mode, which I'm not as drawn to as Arkham City's. It's cool to play as the Joker, but I just haven't played it that much. Although I've never gone out of my way to search for all the collectibles, I do really like finding them as I progress throughout the story, which I've played to completion 3 times now, and I find myself caught up in it every time. Yeah, if you couldn't already tell by now, I love this game. It's admittedly quite short, my last playthrough only took a few days, but it packs in so much excitement and atmosphere in that time frame that the length honestly doesn't matter. It's an awesome interpretation of the Batman universe that's also just an absolute blast to play. The story, the visuals, the gameplay and mood all mesh together to create an experience that grabs your attention from the very beginning and doesn't let go until the credits roll. It's fantastic! And yet, somehow, it's not even the best the Arkham series has to offer. Ah, this bit! I can make a little Dark Knight reference for my little bit at the end of the video.
Stop! But everyone's dying to see what I do next. Okay,
Hello?
you say so then.
No, never mind.